I've been going back and forth on do I want the warm or the cool lighting for my like whatever this thing is called light, and I think I like
Sound
being.
alerts.
I feel like the warm makes me look more brown, so I've just been leaving it at that.
Nice. Gives you a nice chocolatey look.
Yeah.
Will, did you have
Yes.
any? I have to admit I underprepared here, so I'm kind of scrambling to throw some questions together. Um, but I felt like uh the ethics of judgment, the ethics of immortality, um, and like immortal rulers could be a
Mm.
couple interesting things. Uh, the I want to talk to Matthew about some theology of creating a new god and then seeing where that takes you.
Sounds up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah, down for
And,
that. The only other thing I was thinking about was like,
and Captain America, specific, maybe some specific judgments. Captain
mhm.
America would be one that I would be, and then the broader metaphor of collective responsibility towards
Mm.
towards each other, and yeah.
Yeah. The only other thought I was thinking about is if you were the progenitor, what might you judge? How might you approach judging a planet?
I might even talk about a recent celebrity who has passed on who had quite many thoughts about how they should judge people.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Cool. Yeah.
I feel cramped.
Blue Eye
It's
in
fine.
the shadows.
Remind me, do you take care of everything? Do you need me to record my own audio?
Love a backup recording of your own audio.
Okay.
Yeah. We do the primary one just
Silver
through
Dreamer.
Zoom, but um
Cool.
yeah, sometimes it's nice to have a fail safe for potential problems.
All right.
Hey, there's
There
Paul.
he is.
Greetings.
What's
Oh,
up, Paul?
there.
How you doing?
Fine.
Okay.
I was like about to click join, and then I spilled water all over everything.
No.
Yeah, it like there doesn't appear to me to
Did anyone
there
else just
does
lose
not
Paul's
appear to
audio, or
be
is that just me?
too
I
much
think it's just
destruction.
No,
you.
just you.
Did I just lose everybody's audio? I think I just lost everybody's audio.
I think
That's
you
Ooh,
just
weird.
that's
lost everybody's audio, which you
Oh,
probably
because
can't
my
hear me say.
headphones pulled out. So hold on
Yeah.
a second.
All right, I'm closing.
Can all you
the
hear
other
me?
things.
Thumbs up,
Yeah.
thumbs down.
Yep.
Sweet.
It would be funny
you
if we
hear
gave a
me,
thumbs down because
I
like
know.
or just doesn't care.
Oh yeah, you're good. You're good.
Will
Oh
you
no!
care?
In honor of this episode, Will, I think we should do this.
oh,
Now I look like half lit. That looks weird. Oh yeah, now I got a spooky
Ooh,
one
the
going
mood
on.
Oh,
lighting. I
spooky!
love it.
Yeah.
mood lighting.
Test my levels here. Check. Looks good.
Oh,
And
Audacity.
Yeah, Audacity.
Oh, Audacity.
That
Yeah,
makes it
just as a
sick.
backup recording. We do
Yeah.
main recording through Zoom. So
Right. So do you get separate tracks that way, and then you can edit them?
yeah, only
Nice.
if you record on your computer. If you record to the cloud, then you don't
Oh,
get
then
separate
no.
tracks.
Oh.
It's very strange.
That is very strange.
And Will, are you doing a cold open this week?
No, I can save it for next week. We
I mean,
can
either
just-
way, I think I kind of like, you know, if we open just like hanging out, talking, like Paul and Matthew, I don't think you two need to wait to be introduced to start talking.
Sure.
You know, because it's
Sure.
all the
as is
tone
the
is
structure
always
of Hive
just
is my superpower.
yeah, the tone is always just like we're just hanging out, shooting the shit.
EA const.
So if you want to do the cold open, Will, you should just absolutely do it.
All right.
Kid under
I'm gonna hit record. Yes.
Sure.
Hitting
Everybody ready?
record.
I hit record.
Cool. I also hit record, and now I will hit record on Zoom as well.
Has Will hit
Recording
record?
in progress.
So one of the things that really bugs me about Transformers of the 21st century, and really of the last 30 years,
Are you
is
talking about toys, movies, shows? What are you talking
Magic
about?
the
the
Gathering
line.
cards?
Magic the Gathering cards. My God,
The
dude.
line.
Oh yeah, the magic cards right behind me. Is the fact that the leader of the Autobots is not the most popular Autobot. It just
Oh, that
bugs
Bumblebee took.
Yes,
I
I
feel like
don't-
Bumblebee has always been the crowd favorite.
Not-
The
though.
Autobots
Not in
are
the 80s?
good guys, right?
Yeah,
Autobots
yeah.
are the good guys, Decepticons are the
Okay,
bad guys.
the Decepta somethings are the bad guys?
Decepticon,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because they
Okay.
deceive
Deception with an extra.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
with
An
extra
Autobot
letter.
does not come from cars. It comes from autonomy and free will.
you. Oh yes.
According to the retcon from the novelization, anyway.
Wow, you got into this.
I thought
I read
about that,
one
but it was
book.
just a little bit too
You
high
know-
literature for me.
I feel like, as a fellow anarchist, Paula, maybe Proudhon had something to say about
No doubt.
I don't know, man. Like back when Bumblebee was a VW bug, nobody
yeah.
cared. He was the
No,
He's
the
still
VW
the
bug
point
was
of view
tight.
character, though, right?
It was, no,
Like,
it was great, but Bumblebee as a character, he was a known Autobot. But like Wheeljack was more important. Ironhide had more history with Optimus.
No,
like
but
Wait, here's the
Ratchet was
thing,
a
'cause
big deal.
I
feel like
literally only know
Bumblebee-
three. Go ahead, Steve, then I'll ask my question.
oh, just I think Paul was onto something where Bumblebee was kind of like the POV character, the bumbling kid with the heart of gold who
Right.
stumbled his way into
Mhm.
being important to all the stories.
And then the humans interfaced with Bumblebee.
because
That's
he
the
was
part
short.
that's dumb to me, is because you have transforming robots.
Yeah.
That alone is cool enough that you don't need human characters
I
at
agree.
all.
You
Yeah.
really don't.
So,
you really don't.
here's my question though, because
Please.
I was a big Transformers kid.
Yeah.
Back before Steve and Will were born, in the good
Yeah.
days of childhood entertainment.
Whoa.
Um,
Whoa.
I'm just
Until they
going
came along and ruined everything.
I'm just
I
gonna
only know
take it
three
in stride.
things. I only know three things about the modern movies.
Yeah.
One, that Michael Bay directs them.
Yes.
Some of
Two,
them.
that Megan Fox looks very good bending over in a car, but that image has now been seared in everyone's brain because it's way too many places.
Bending over a car, not in a car, just to.
Yeah. She,
Well, no,
she
no,
popped
because
the hood.
Just,
I'm
popped the
sure
hood
they
and
found a
opened
lot
it.
of
She's
places
bending
for her
over
to
to
bend
look
over.
at the
Yeah,
engine.
Right.
Yes.
I'm just saying
Yes.
in a car has a slightly different implication.
Okay, that's
This is
fair.
a
That's
very-
Which is inferred from the first implication, but
also fair. But then the loud thing being that they're all obnoxiously loud to the
Yes.
point where I was in one theater and could hear it in the next theater and was like, I don't want to watch these movies.
So Christopher Nolan was a consultant, you're saying, on the audience?
My
Hans
personal
Zimmer, yeah.
favorite Decepticon, Transformer of any kind, because I had it as a toy at 6, and so that's when the best
Of course.
impressions of media are formed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
was the one that was like a music player, but it had like
Yeah.
a little helper that popped out that was a cassette tape.
Yeah.
Will
Here's the
is
thing.
going
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
here.
grab the Lego. Grab the
Kids
Lego.
today don't know about cassette
Yeah.
tapes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Soundwave, because he's the best effing Transformer, man.
thank you. So did they update it to be like a Blu-ray or an MP3
No.
player, or is it still a cassette
Well-
tape because the 80s are great and kids just have to learn the 80s?
No, he's a
Would
he's a
be amazing
satellite
if
in the
he's
big
just like
movies.
a living Spotify playlist.
No.
Oh, he's a conceptual transformer, just living in the internet.
So is he a cassette tape now? Still?
No, well,
Depends.
It's not
So,
in everything,
okay.
first of all.
okay. So, all right. So the first 5 Transformers movies are one semi timeline, and then Bumblebee and Rise
Wait.
of the Machines is a separate one.
How
okay?
many?
Isn't
Transformers
Bumblebee a
movies have there
prequel?
been?
There's
Far too
7
many.
Transformers movies.
Did
I
you
can't
know
Rise of the
Why?
Beast is the 7th live action Transformer movie.
because they make money and people enjoy them.
They sell.
Again,
Like,
why?
let's be honest. It doesn't matter. That's not the question
Because
you
they're
asked
giant
first.
transforming robots and people like cars.
in the first
That's
first
why.
5
Yeah.
movies, in the
don't
first
get
5
it.
movies, they were going to use Soundwave multiple times, and they finally settled on, I think it's the 3rd movie, and he is a satellite that launches a Ravage, who's the Jaguar thing, dropping down onto the Earth. In the Bumblebee
And
movie,
it's never,
which
and they
acts
aren't
as a
tapes.
reboot.
Yeah.
The
I thought it was a
Bumblebee
prequel.
movie-
It's a
oh.
reboot.
It's a reboot prequel. It's set in the 80s, but
preboot?
it's a reboot for the franchise where they've been redesigned to be a lot more colorful, for lack of an even better phrase. But in Bumblebee, there's a flashback to Cybertron that has this design of Soundwave, where he still has sort of cassettes.
The
but
artifacts of being
they're
a tape
bulkier.
recorder.
They're like boxes, and
Yeah.
cartoon or toy versions that look more like this, where it's less clearly a stereo. He's been a tank, and so he kind of acts more as like a APC. And so, and like the front will open up and the either like a disc or just a box will come out. And those are the ones that transform into Laserbeak, Ravage, Rumble, and all that.
So they've already rebooted the series.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
Bumblebee
come on.
was a reboot.
It's been 20 years.
Yeah.
They've rebooted Spider-Man
Yeah,
like
it's been
3.5
a while.
times already.
Yeah.
No, the first
I was
one
just
came out
counting.
like
It was
fi-
like
the first one came out like 5 years.
First one
No.
came out while I was. The first one came out while I was in Europe.
Yeah, the first
so
one
it was
came out the
2007.
same year as Spider-Man 3.
The first one came out in
The original
2007,
Spider-Man 3.
and me and Will, Transformers was like the basis of our, like the first basis of our friendship when we were in preschool. And I was like, I'm gonna be over on the other side of an ocean when it comes out, but you wait for me. I'll be back, and we'll watch it together. And I got back, and Will was like, "Bad news.
All right, folks. Well,
I saw it without you. It's terrible." I was like, "We're gonna go see it anyway." He's gonna be like, "You're gonna be disappointed." And even knowing that I was gonna be disappointed, I was still disappointed. I had low expectations, and then he lowered them, and then it failed to meet that.
You're talking about the first
welcome to
movie?
this episode
Yes.
of a podcast in which Will and Steve bully me for being an old person with good taste of childhood stuff.
How dare!
Today
How
we're gonna
dare!
talk
You're the
How
one
dare!
who's brought.
I
brought
still
age into
have
everything.
Transformers toys. How
First of all.
dare
I'm just
you?
trying to get us into a podcast. I'm a natural host. I'm trying not to host.
This
is
is just
a
built a
cold
Lego
open. You don't have to
Bumblebee.
get it.
Someone take us into an ad
Also-
break or something.
By the way,
We don't-
have you not seen Bumblebee, the movie?
I've heard Bumblebee is a good movie. I have not
It's-
seen it.
It's the
Surprisingly
one that I
good.
think you would actually like.
It is
Is
the
Mark
best of the
Wahlberg
six.
or Megan Fox in it?
They are not
No.
in it.
I thought they were like
It's
in
a
everything.
reboot. It's got Haley Steinfeld.
They're not even in a single movie together.
What?
Megan
Yeah.
Megan Fox
was in,
like
like, two,
aged out
right?
out of like
Megan Fox was in the
Whatever,
first
right.
two, and Mark Wahlberg was
aged
in
out?
number
Is he like
4 and
27?
5.
4, 5, yeah.
again. These started in 2007.
Yeah.
And the shelf life for somebody who's cast in the
Someone who's
Megan
supposed
Fox is
to be
cast
who's supposed
in
to
is
pass as a 19-year-old.
disgustingly
Okay.
aged out pretty quick.
short.
Things have
Yeah.
opened. I am feeling the cold, dark embrace of age. Can we?
You
move
did this to
beyond-
yourself. I'm
that's
just
a
gonna
big
say.
problem.
You
I'm
open these
just gonna-
floodgates. Okay, Steven, what are we doing here? What
Yeah.
is this?
So anyway, welcome to Hype is My Superpower. This is a podcast, comic books, things we're hyped on, blah blah blah. You know the drill. We've got guests, as you obviously heard. We've got Matthew and Paul, the host and permanent guest host of Superhero Ethics, and they are here to talk with us about some of the ethical quandaries that came up in Judgment Day, Avengers, X-Men, Eternals crossover that we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks on the podcast in our normal episodes. And we thought, rather than, go back to reading comic books and doing hard things, we would have our friends on and hang out. Isn't that so much more fun?
Yay.
Absolutely.
I don't have to
Thanks for
edit,
being
so
here,
this is
guys.
great.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, Nipuna has 4 tracks to edit, so he's cursing our names. But I
Awesome.
promise you, Nips, this will be a lot shorter than usual.
This is a short episode.
Also,
So
I'm
Judgment
Zen
Day.
Madman.
Oh yeah.
For
Yeah.
watchers of the stream. I don't know whether you have your commands enabled, but
No, that's right. Yeah. We are also on Twitch. We haven't plugged this on the podcast
on the pod,
yet, so
you don't have the
maybe we
full
should do that.
cross the
Yeah.
two directional. Yeah.
Oh,
Do you
yeah,
ever
so-
feel
so-
like
someone should,
not waiting
send-
a million years for these to be published because I suck at publishing and it's entirely my fault? You can hop on
If we're actually live,
twitch.tv
someone should like
slash
send me the
silverdreamer.
stream, and I can like send it out to people. Maybe we can get some people watching and yelling at us.
I mean,
Twitch.tv slash silverdreamer with a Y.
Okay.
Yeah.
let me. Dun, 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 dun.
Was that the Mario theme?
That sure,
Just scatting.
Okay.
yeah. I scat. Okay,
Okay, we good to
A.X.E.
go?
Judgment Day.
Yeah. So, Will, what happened in A.X.E. Judgment Day? Just to.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the,
No, you know what? I'll summarize.
Don't summarize. It'll take too long. Sum up.
Well, yeah.
the
So,
elevator pitch.
Yeah, so the Eternal Society, they create a new god who which they think is going to provide a better set of directions for their society to follow in the future. The god decides to do the thing that Eternals gods usually do, which is judge the planet and basically decide whether life on Earth is worth continuing or not. They have 24 hours to justify themselves, and it judges people based on kind of on their own standards. The best summary from the crossover came in an issue where they said, like, if you're gonna best judge the best crocodile, you're not gonna do like which crocodile ignores being a crocodile the best or transcends. You're not going to do the saint of crocodiles. You're going to go for the one who eats the most fucking people, right? So
Sure.
so every individual is judged based on sort of like how well they live up to the set of ethics that they set for themselves. And kind of it's a little wishy-washy, but that's the point. And
The Kieran Gillen judgments are that.
Yeah.
The cameo side story.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about
judgments
that.
Yeah.
But that's basically, and then blah 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 superhero stuff. They save the day. That part is less interesting to you, I'm sure, and we're more interested. The ethics questions are about, how are people judged? Why are they judged? What role does judgment have from a more of like a individual ethical standpoint, also a theological standpoint, because this is a new god that's been created, and then the overriding metaphor of the whole story arc is about what is our collective responsibility to each other when there are larger things like, for example, getting vaccinated or wearing a mask or taking precautions during COVID, or, limiting your carbon footprint and, being environmentally responsible for, in the face of global warming. There are all of these like collective and public concerns that can doom us all, and we may not be individually responsible or capable of saving the planet, saving ourselves, individually, but we have, and to what extent do we have a responsibility to each other to do the right thing? And so, yeah, that's kind of the summary, the long and short of where I wanted to kind of take this conversation. Then if we have any more time, we can kind of go through some individual superheroes who were judged and talk about what judgments were rendered and whether we think that's cool or fair or not. When we pitched this idea to you two, Matthew, you said right off the bat we have, collective judgment for individual acts, and that set you right off. So I thought maybe we wanted to start there.
Sure, yeah, and I will say, so I am the Ethical Panda, so you can find me online, and I do a lot of podcasting and other kind of things. I have a background in ethics, among other kind of related academic things. And one of the things I think that gets talked about in ethics, so first of all, this is a very common idea.
Mhm.
I think one of the things I pointed out that I think you guys did not know as well, but I think for a lot of your listeners, probably one of the first things that comes to mind is the character of Q, because he does this quite literally with humanity.
You're talking about Star Trek now.
Yes, Star Trek. In the first episodes of Star Trek, and it kind of sets up a recurring theme that will go on for a number of Star Trek properties through the ages, is this idea of humanity being judged. And I'll talk about that solution, but just first of all, on the idea of the collective judgment, I think it's basically an ethical idea of like that there's something deeply problematic about looking at trying to make a judgment about a group of people and then passing judgment on all the individuals in that group based on that. And this can be anything from like when, a particular, like criminal acts are done by members of a particular group, saying, okay, therefore we have to punish all members of that group. And that can be,
Right.
like you can see that in Palestine and Israel. You can see that in the United States. You can see that in all kinds of places. It can also be anything that's where it's not even just an actual punishment. It's just like, oh, look at these 5 people who did this. All people of this group are blank.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things in particular that that those kind of judgments miss, I mean, there's just the fundamental problem of, at the end of the day, I might be in a group with someone else, but if they did even if like 99 out of 100 people, all those 99 people did the thing, the 100th person didn't do it.
Right.
And so punishing that person, it doesn't make any sense. Now that can get into a question of, are you doing it because you're punishing, or are you saying that, well, because this large number of the group did it, that means everyone is, likely to do it. So we're trying to be, stopping it for that reason. But that's a whole other question. According to the frame of this question, this is about punishment.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
So there's a difference to you in here between sort of like centering the agency of the individual who's doing the judgment versus, like, as I introduced before, where you have these problems that are where people do have, in a disorganized sense, a collective responsibility towards public health, towards the sustainability of life on the planet, et cetera, et cetera. And you do have often the people who are least responsible, people in the global south, for example, who are, taking the majority of the damage to environmental damage, and, horrendous flooding, monsoons, etc. But they're not responsible for the carbon emissions. What's the difference in your eyes? Like, is it entirely you're centering the ethics of the agent judging everybody rather than the ethics of the people who are being judged?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one part of it. But I think another thing is that when you're doing judgments like this, context is so easily forgotten. First of all, because I think often you can create an idea, and I think this is a problem that the Eternals or the gods or whatever it's going to be in any story is always going to have, of, oh, well, I'm the objective person. I'm using this objective standard to judge people. But like you said, okay, if we're going to judge alligators based on how many people do they judge, well, that's probably because you're a person and you don't want to be eaten by an alligator. That's actually an incredibly biased and incredibly subjective basis upon which to judge alligators. But even if you put that aside, let's say that is for some reason the moral judgment. And let's say we're going to see which group of alligators should live. And we say that there's this one group that eats people all the time, and this other group that never eats people. Okay, barring any other information, you might say this one group of alligators is much more, vicious and ferocious, so we should do whatever we want to do to them. Inherently problematic idea, but following that logic. But then if you look further and you say, oh, that group actually lives in an area where people frequently get drunk and do stupid things and pass out in the swamp that the alligators live, whereas this other group never comes into contact with people.
Right.
and I guess using that part of the example, but I think that's the other thing where it's like when you're looking at any kind of a question without context, without a larger picture, it just doesn't make any sense.
Paul,
Were
do
we
you have
saying
anything?
eating people was good? I thought it was the more people they ate, the better. Maybe that's just my.
We can clip that.
brain.
No, that was the example given. Is that if you are judging an alligator to its own standards, then you're going to say that the more successful alligator, the alligator with the least internal contradictions between what it wants and what it achieves, is the one that's better at eating people versus the one who is the Mother Teresa of alligators, the one who is
I mean, yeah, then I completely misunderstood that, but either way, I think that it's
Your
still
point
like
still is super valid.
yeah, because then like the alligators that never have people around, like why are we judging them? It's not their fault.
Yeah,
They're
it's not their
in
fault.
Florida
There's no one
with
to eat, right?
drunk people falling in swamps all the time.
I will say the only out that they give themselves in this comic is that it's about the total weight between the two, so it's more of a democratic judgment,
and it's entirely hand waved. Like this part is kind of the flimsiest. Like the metaphysics are never explained. Somebody's like, so is it like based on total number of good people versus bad people, or is there like does one person can one person cancel out five, one bad person doing really bad things cancel out five just rather average people who
averagely just bad.
Right, like is it binary thumbs up thumbs down, or is it like that's a 10 and that's a 2,
and it's never explained. The space god, the progenitor they call it, does give each person a thumbs up thumbs down as judgment, but it's never they're left with open questions that are never quite filled or understood. Basically it's just it's a roundabout way to say Earth gets a thumbs down. We all have to go be Avengers, do a big punchy thing, and save the day.
So they call this thing the progenitor, but they created it?
Yeah, it's pretty funny, huh?
Nice. And it's like basically an artificial intelligence, right? Like they created this intelligence to judge everyone?
Not
sense?
really.
So it's not really artificial, or what?
No. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Celestials in the Marvel Universe. If you saw the movie Eternals, that's the giant space car. So they were aliens that were created at the beginning of time, essentially. Will is going to pick so many nits in my summary, but I'm just trying to say it quickly. God damn it.
It's fine.
And they are essentially responsible for all life on Earth and pretty much all life in the universe. They meddle around and make things happen. And so they are not gods in the theological sense, because there is sort of like
there's a pantheon.
There's a structure. We were talking about this last week. There's like gods like Thor who are generated by belief, and their deeds create a feedback loop of worship that increases their strength, etc. And that is sort of like, and there's all sorts of pantheons in the Marvel universe. That's kind of like the accepted definition of what a god is, but they're not the gods of creation. Right, they are created by belief. They did not create humanity. And then, in the sort of like practical sense of what a god is, it's like, well, the Celestials,
they have the power to create life.
Did create life and are acting as the sort of final arbiter of morality in the on our planet. So like, they may not theologically be gods, but they are practically gods, and the Eternals treat them as such, whereas nobody else really pays them much of a damn of attention at all, or just is like, hey, that's a big weird alien.
Well, and see, I think that's, and again,
why are you trying to kill us?
Too drawn into the specifics of this particular example of it, but in general, I think that's why it's kind of impossible to know without understanding why is this judgment happening, because particularly when there is a consequence to judging the actions of someone else. And the first question you have to ask is, well, A, what is the agenda of the person making the judgment and deciding on the punishment, and how does it affect them? And what is their own stated goal from it? Because if it is this sense of like justice that they're claiming of, the good succeed and the bad get punished, okay, well, that's a completely arbitrary claim, but fair enough if that's what they're doing.
Right.
If your idea is that we want to encourage others to be better, and so if they see that unless you are good at being the essence of you get punished, now we have a deterrent idea. We know that doesn't work, but okay, now we know we can judge them based on that. Or if it is if this is a scientist, where it's the idea of, okay, I want to see which of my test tube experiments are doing the best, and I'm going to stop worrying about the 6 that aren't doing well and focus on the 4 that are.
Yeah.
Okay, that's now a completely different set. And now I think we can get into the ethics of experimentation, and we've got billions of sentient beings that are, part of the experiment. Like, watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It's a bad thing to do.
Totally.
But I think that's what, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to come on the podcast and be like, okay, the whole concept is dumb. But the whole concept is dumb.
Well,
because
it's not our story. It's
some
fine.
degree of objectivity. And I just don't think that can ever exist. And that's kind of my.
Well, and again, and this is kind of how the story arc ends, right? Is that they turn it back on the progenitor and say, hey, you're doing a bad thing, sitting in judgment in this way. You're a flawed god. We need to, end you, remake you, blah blah blah, whatever. And that's how.
Do they all do the thumb thing at the same time, like collectively?
Back on it.
That would be pretty sweet. Not visually, but in a sense, yes. Yeah. And actually, it ends up mostly being Salma Hayek's character from the movie A.X.E. But that's less important. Anyway,
it's like a "you're judging us, we're judging you" kind of thing.
Yes. You can't fire me, I quit.
Right. Exactly.
This whole court's out of order. Actually, would be much more.
Nice. Yes.
So yeah, Paul, I wanted to give you some space to talk about the sort of concepts of collective judgment and sort of like if you had anything to add there before we funnel the conversation along to another topic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm against judgment in general, like, as a concept. Like,
I had a feeling you were going to go there as I was listening to Matthew talk about, all of these different.
I'm like, collective judgment is even worse. But like judgment in the first place, like judging an entire person or being or whatever on whatever, like I don't really believe in ethics or morals and kind of quotes. Like I think it's all subjective, and I feel very strongly about my own subjective feelings, but like it is like, well, what do you value? Right. So it's like, who is anyone to sit in judgment of another entire person or being, and, collectively judging people for the actions of others. Like, that's even worse, but I mean, I'll judge actions, but I'm always going to say like, well, that's my subjective opinion of something else based on what I value. And I also understand that there's no, like, I think the idea of like a scorecard kind of like, I think it implies some sort of objective standard, like where you can weigh, oh, these are the good things, these are the bad things. And then like, okay, you're like a 5 on like an ethical scale, and like, oh, you're a 9, and like, so yeah, the whole premise in the first place, like, I think it's interesting as a concept in terms of like, oh, we're going to do this thing, and then being like, oh, wait, no, this was not a good idea, let's not do that thing.
Right.
And I think a lot of things that go wrong in societies is like people judging one another based on, a subset of their actions, which I think is different than judging those actions and being like, hey, this thing you're doing is causing harm. Right. It's causing harm to others. And thus I'm going to say, I think that's a bad thing, and I want you to stop it. And if you're not going to stop it, I'm going to try and take actions to stop you from doing it. Right. Yeah. And like, I'm good with that. But like,
Right.
that's different to me than being like, I think you're a bad person. And, you know, I'm giving you the thumbs down. No, I'm giving your action the thumbs down. I'm going to try and stop you. And like, you know, then if you stop doing it, like, cool. Okay, we're good. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I think, Paul, you've said what I've been trying to say with a whole bunch of words, much simpler and much better. But I think that's like, to me, that's why I want to keep pointing out the falseness of the objective idea, because I think that, it's like, on the flip side, we all make judgments all the time, you know, and I will sometimes, like, you know, I'll be driving down the road and I will see another car and I will make a snap judgment about how good of a driver I think that is, and then make an accordance of how close or far away, or do I want to pass that car as fast. If the car's weaving all over the road, I probably want to pass it as fast as I can. Maybe that is a fair judgment using information because I've seen a pretty good indication of something.
Yeah.
Also, though, if they have certain bumper stickers that are going to tell me, I think that if I had any kind of contact with this car, should something bad happen, I think this could go in a very bad. You know, if they have I love guns and I'm going to use them when I'm happpi to, it tells me I don't want to have any chance of a bumper fender with this person.
Like, you go ahead, I'll be back here.
And the thing is, though, that in all those things, though, I am owning that this is I am making this judgment for my own personal agenda.
Sure.
Right. I think that's the line I think we're both kind of talking about is that's so very different than I think I can sit in judgment in some objective sense.
Yeah.
So in the interest of moving the conversation along, should we talk about theology?
Let me actually just say something about
real
the
simple
answer
question
that's given to Q in the Star Trek, because I do think it's an interesting way of framing it, which is that what Q keeps trying to do is say, look at these events from your past. This proves that you are irredeemable as a species. And the kind of answer to it is, you're trying to say that that you have enough information to make a final judgment about something that is still ongoing. And the idea being, like, how can you judge someone based on their past actions as a way to predict their future actions? Because they're changing, they're growing, they're learning, they're evolving. And that, I mean, we can to some extent make that judgment, but people do change. Races can change. Humanity changes. You know, things change. And so there's this really nice idea in it of, you know, remembering that, like, you know, past patterns can teach you a lot for sure, but that when it becomes, it's always been this, so it always will be that, not only is that bad judgment for all the reasons we're talking about, it's just dumb. But we do it as humans all the time.
I'm down with that, and I think the comic ends up kind of taking that stance too, but it complicates it in an interesting way too, and this is why I think the global warming parallel is particularly apt. Is that they're saying, like, you always say you're going to be better, you always, you know, you know, you humans, you're always procrastinating being a better person. You're going to do it tomorrow. You're going to, you say, like, look how far we've come, you know, and that kind of ends up being the takeaway, the moral that, like, Captain America, for example, holds on to, is like, you know, it's not a great world, but, you know, let's see where we are tomorrow. But the response from the progenitor is like, look, you are, like, and why this ends up to me being a global warming parallel is, like, there is a certain point at which it's just too late. Like, you blow past the tipping point, and, like, maybe not too late, but, like, you know, you get to a tipping point in emissions, and you have raised the sea level enough to swallow, you know, this island nation. Like, you have created a genocide, you've created an apocalypse. This isn't somebody's, like, conscious action or choice. And you can make all these plans, like, oh yeah, we're lowering emissions, oh yeah, we've got this to set in by this date, and this, you know, this target that we are in the process of hitting in 2050. It's like, you've already killed, you know, however many millions of people and displaced millions more, and you didn't just go and blow up that pipeline and shut down that refinery. Like, this is kind of the point that why I think that this is an apt metaphor, is, like, it is arbitrary and it's not fair, but there is consequences to our continued inaction at being our best selves.
Yeah, and I think there's like, to me, there's a difference between judgment and consequences, but here maybe the judgment is kind of, I mean, it's the consequences of them creating the progenitor, right? And
sure,
but like, so I think it works as a metaphor, but it is very different in terms of like yeah, human activity on Earth has grave consequences for every life form on the planet. You know, and that's where the kind of the metaphor of like, they're going to destroy the Earth, right? They're not just going to like finger snap like humans out of existence.
No, yeah.
Which to me is like the opposite. I'm like, look, if you're judging humans and saying, you know, y'all done a bad job, you need to go.
Just
like,
make gravity stop working for humans.
Like if,
let them fly off.
Exactly. And then it's like,
life forms are suffering. Like
right, exactly. And like maybe then the crocodiles won't have any people to eat and it'll be harder to judge them. But like, you know, this is where it works very well though, as a metaphor for climate change, because if humans don't pass, they're literally going to destroy everything. And in our world, like if humans don't pass, which seems unlikely humans will pass, but like that's not even the pessimist in me. That's just like looking at the world around us. You know, 2050, like really this is our targets. Like that's just so that you can put it on another generation. Like 2020 would be the target, you know, 2025, like you know,
I'm with you.
And so that's like what's happening on Earth right now, right? And humans are not doing well at it.
See, and I would actually push back on the metaphor some, because I think to me we're mixing up, as you were saying, Paul, actions and consequences versus living beings. I'm not going to say people, so we can expand it even further, and their moral weight somehow. Because
this is why theology was interesting to me as a topic of conversation, because it kind of, being an atheist myself, it's not a particularly like I don't approach this as like this is an immoral or moral act from, you know, this God figure. Like my general approach towards religion is like, huh, you believe that? That's wild.
Yeah.
Right. And so like it doesn't matter to me in the least whether the agency of this divine being who is passing down judgment, that's kind of like it's abstracted to the point where it might as well be climate change. Like I personally don't differentiate, and so that's why I was interested in getting sort of the theological aspect from you about like what specifically is it about having a God, a divine being, a sort of like something in that role. And I think we covered pretty well how does that make it a different you know, like how does it judgment different from consequence. I feel like we've done that pretty well so far, but like what are sort of like the theological concepts around
so this is one that I've thought about quite a lot in the last few days, and apologies, my own political leanings are going to come out pretty clearly here, but if you're not someone on board with where I'm going with this, I'm not really sure why you're listening to this podcast or whatever. I hate Pat Robertson, and I'm glad that he's dead. I don't think
that's how I call him Scalia.
I saw
I'm not happy about that part of me, but I also don't feel sad about it in any way. And to be clear, I am a Christian. I would love the idea that Pat Robertson is being tortured for all of eternity for the horrible harm that he did, because I think he has blood on his hands of people he has killed and horrible abuses he's done by preaching homophobia and hate and doing it all by blaspheming the name of God and the God I believe in. When the day he dies, I take comfort and frustration, and it is to me the beauty and the confusion and the frustration and the wonder of wrestling with the particular image of God that I find in the person of Jesus Christ. That is, and again, I'm not evangelizing here. I think that is just one path to understanding the divine. You don't have to have any understanding of the divine. Agnosticism, atheism, Buddhism, all of it is wonderful. None of it is more true. This is just my truth.
Yeah.
But in my truth, I believe in a God who can love Pat Robertson, even though I can't. and can forgive me that I can't. And I believe in a God that is not going to judge or punish Pat Robertson.
Sure.
And to me, that's in part what makes God God, is that because at the end, I think all of this idea to judge is, I'm going to use sinful in a way that is fundamentally different than the way most of the time that word is used, but in that it is fallen. That is not what we are supposed to be doing. Because again, when it is making a moral judgment of a person, because, and I don't want to get lost in it, but I fundamentally don't think the metaphor of climate change works, because to me that is a thing where, because it has happened, the consequences are now things that we have to deal with. And at the end of the day, like, once we're actually like really dealing with consequences, punishing the people who caused, like, I don't care at that point what billionaire caused it, except in like, how do we stop it? Or how do we prevent it? How do we make things better?
Yeah.
So for me, theologically, like, I think what matters is consequence. What matters is actions. What matters is, okay, this person has done harm. How do we make that right? How is healing found? How is restitution found? And while I think that, like, yeah, I think there's a visceral joy that a lot of people, myself included, would get out of knowing that Pat Robertson is suffering because of the horrible harm he inflicted on people, I don't think that that's good in the long. I don't think that giving into that in beyond just to, like, you know, watching a fun movie about it happening. Desperado's a fun movie. The bad guys get terrible things happening to them.
Sure. Yeah.
But my own theology is like that's not actually the place where I want to be putting my focus, and that, to me, if I have any understanding of a divine being, it's of one that understands everybody's context and nuance, and isn't interested in, but not in a, like, I'm not going to judge Pat Robertson because he was no better or worse than anybody else. That's not the point at all. It's what can we do to fix this? How can we adjust this? How can we work to make this better? And that's why, to me, like, yeah, like, I'm mad at the billionaires who are doing so much to make global warming get worse and worse. But at the end of the day, I don't want to make them suffer because I don't like them. I want to take their money and use it to fix the things that they broke.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I guess that's what, for me, theology is often very wrapped up in judgment. And I think that is very funny, because they're not even in Christianity, in a lot of religions. One of the sacred truths is, in a lot of these traditions, like, don't judge. It's not your place to judge. It's not your place to decide who is right, who is wrong, who is good or who is bad. And yet all the time people are like, cool, God, what a great idea. Now we're going to totally ignore everything you just said and build these institutions that do all the things you just said not to do.
Like, judge
Well
not,
said.
lest ye be judged yourself.
Throw stones, if someone says that the Buddha kill him, like, whatever way you put it in your individual language, it's individual context of a particular faith. Yeah, it's always there.
Yeah, for me, it's just Metallica songs.
Yeah.
So that's my entire context. But I really like what you're just saying, in that, like, I found, like, I related to it, like, as much as I related to everything Steve was saying.
Yeah.
Which is, certainly more my truth from my understanding of the world. Like, I don't believe in any gods. Most of the gods that I find people talk about, I'm like, I feel like I would towards the progenitor. Like, yeah, I'm not in favor of Pat Robertson's God. Like, that sounds like a horrible thing to exist, and I would fight it if I could, but I don't think it exists. So, like, we're good. But, like, what you're describing is, like, for me, there's no need to see any of that as, like, divine or spiritual, but I can still relate to it on a personal level, where it's like, okay, that's kind of who I try to be, like, and so I can see myself as a god, and maybe never mind.
That's Mormonism. That's a perfectly acceptable. Never mind. The whole of it. But I think, and again, this is just purely getting to theology, but, like, I'm a personal believer that you cannot be a person of faith and not be an agnostic. That there has to be some understanding of mystery and doubt, and that.
Right. Then it's not faith, right? Like,
yeah. And to me, like,
right.
I think there's just things that we don't understand, and being completely convinced that you know exactly what it is or what it isn't. Okay. Sure.
it's funny because for me, I considered myself an agnostic for a long time, and then I realized, you know what, I kind of that's a coward's take in a way. Like of course it's like saying like, oh, I see both sides, but I'm not gonna of this argument, but I'm not gonna pick one. Like it's I sure it I don't have personal fundamental knowledge whether there is a God or not. I feel like nobody can, or very few people can. If you've had a mystical experience where you've touched the divine with your own hand and heard its voice in your own head, then you can have knowledge yourself. Otherwise, you can't disprove the hypothesis essentially. And so to me, it just gets to like, do I live my life as if there is a theistic God or not? And the answer is no. And so, okay, yeah, I'm an atheist.
I feel like agnostic is like being undeclared at college.
As a major. Well, I think also though it's a word that is just used in a number of ways, right? Like,
yeah,
it can be used as a sort of like shoulder shrug, I don't know, or it can be used as like a more specifically, hello, cat. That
is how agnostic is used. We want to say hello to different cats depending on their personality. Absolutely.
But
well, I guess I do believe in the divine because because cats.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, Paul, finish what you're.
Yeah. So basically, just that, like, I mean, I think any rational person has to acknowledge a lack of certainty on a wide range of things, which is like most things. Yeah. I do think that there are things that you can be like, well, that's ridiculous, and like, sure, like the chances of such and such and like are approaching zero, but I guess maybe. But like, to me, once the chances of something approach zero, I'm just like, I'm going to operate as if that is false with certainty because the chances of it are infinitesimal. And I feel like there's a large range of beliefs that when I look at in an attempt at rationality, I'm like, nah, like, but like, so to me, like the word agnostic is often used as a way of kind of like walking back atheism from some people, totally. But that's different, I think, than the way that Matthew's using it. Mm-hmm. And, like for me, I think uncertainty and humans' failure to understand uncertainty is one of the biggest problems in our world, where because uncertainty can coexist with knowledge, right? Yeah. Like you can know that something's 80% likely to be true. That is knowledge, but it's not certainty. And I think
gravity is still a theory at this point.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, there's just tons of things where it's like, well, we can either operate as if they're true or we can operate as if they're likely. And that's different from just shrugging and saying, I don't know, And so,
Good. Yeah. There's a lot I want to say here. And it really, I think, as you said, like you're all talking about, it goes to the definitions we're using, but not only of agnostic, but also of atheism. And I really appreciate the way you kind of teased it out a bit, Steve, of saying that you are atheistic.
Yeah.
Because a saying that's become pretty prevalent among progressive Christians, which I very much relate to, is that most of the time when an atheist tells me about the God that they don't believe in, I say, cool, I don't believe in that God either.
Right.
Yeah.
And very, very brief history lesson, like not even history lesson, but just historical comment. Many of you probably know this as well. Like many of our ideas of a theistic God, particularly of a very much like you were saying, Steve, like you hear a literal voice, you are touched in a literal way you can literally understand, fundamentally comes as a response to modernism, as a response to the Industrial Revolution and very much Darwinism itself. I mean, fundamentalism is born quite literally to reject Darwinism. And the idea being that I think for an awful lot of religious history, the idea of truth and scientific fact being in any way linked it makes no sense to anybody. Like and that's why the first two stories of the Bible fundamentally contradict each other, because the idea, and a lot of rabbis have written about this, that Christians miss this, is that the reason why the first story says it's created in 6 days and the second story says in 1 day in ways that literally contradict each other is to say, we're not trying to tell you the actual facts because we barely have invented bronze. What the hell do we know about how the world was created?
Right.
Like,
These are
help you
stories.
find
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
And so to me, when I say agnostic, yeah, I do think I think it's this incredibly broad, check all thing these days. But for me, what it means is that there are truths in the universe that I can understand. I can understand, gravity being one of them. Light is another one. I don't fully understand it. There are different theories out there, but I know that it is a thing.
Right.
There's also other stuff that I don't understand and that I don't think my human brain at this point has any concept to be able to understand. Things like what happens after death and why did this all get started and all of that. And to me, faith is about saying, I don't understand those things, but I do have either experiences or beliefs or ideas that give me a framework of what to do with all of this mystery and thought and feeling that I don't have any conscious framework for. And so I'm going to hang out with other humans who use metaphors that are similar to mine to help explain it.
I'm absolutely with you. Sorry.
Yeah. And to me, that's the thing is that, like, it's when we forget that those are metaphors and start instead saying, no, these are actual literal truths. And my literal truth is so much better than yours that we're going to have a war over it. That's when all the problems come. And I think that's again where I think it's like, again and again, Jesus, Buddha, Mohammed, different Shinto lead, all coming along. They're all saying to some extent and purpose, stop taking your metaphors so seriously. And yet people being people were like, well, but we could build a really big statue and have a war if we took it seriously. So let's do that instead.
Yeah.
Statues are cool though,
Statues are pretty cool.
Statues are cool.
Pretty cool.
Like that celestial that gets frozen at the end. Like that would be a pretty cool place to visit. I think.
Yeah. You take a boat out there.
I have some questions about what it does for tidal patterns in that part of the world. But
that's a concern. That's a legit
What is
concern.
it started to come out of the planet. Like, there's gotta be a hole.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
But you probably have some cool like reef structures,
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to bring it back to Judgment Day, to the actual comic. But if you've got another tangent, by all means.
Well, I'm actually going to take it in a totally different direction to one of my favorite superhero involved questions, but that ties, I think, into all of this.
Okay.
Because I think one of the things that we often, I think one of the core ideas that so many people have for their philosophy is agency, and that it is vital, vital, vital to have agency, which I, for the most part, agree with.
Yeah.
But we also then get into questions like collective responsibility and all this, my ability to swing my hand hits your face. Now, I'm going to do something really dark. I'm going to do something very not kosher that is forbidden theologically on this podcast. I realize that, and I hope you'll be okay with this blasphemy. I'm going to mention DC Comics. Because this is a Marvel-based pod, but in the first season
it's only DC based out of, for me anyway. I don't give a fuck. It's just about I only have so much time on this earth, and I'm not going to get into something without getting way too deep into it, and so I got to limit myself at some point.
Also
but the point is,
read all of Marvel.
at the end of the first season of Supergirl, the villains come along and quite literally take mind control over every human being on the planet. And our heroes are like, oh my God, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? What it's revealed is because these people think destroying planets is bad, not out of some other agenda, but just because they think destroying planets is bad. And so they are forcing through mind control all of humanity to fix global warming. And their plan is that within 3 years of people being complete mindless automatons, they will have forced humanity to fundamentally change the economy, fundamentally change the industry, and fix global warming. Of course, our heroes are like, no, this is bad, so we have to stop it.
Right, because it's fundamentally,
So here's my question:
conservative in a way.
Is that wrong? To go to your thing about the collective response, to me, the much better question is not to me, okay, how do we morally feel about this person who's doing a bad thing that's harming others, but what do we do about it? So, if you can remove all agency and in doing so prevent all harm, and theoretically give agency back.
It's like borrowing agency.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'd do it.
What do you guys think about that particular solution?
I think it's wrong. I don't think it's necessarily a bad solution, but I do think it's wrong.
And that's ethics in a nutshell right there.
Yeah.
I guess for me, it's like, you got a better idea? Like,
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I've seen people talk about mind control and like mind controlling someone else is fundamentally unethical, right? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what if one person's about to kill another person and then you mind control the person just long enough to have them not kill the other person? And then the other person's not dead. It's like, well, I would say that whatever I have against mind control, which is a lot, very against it, broadly speaking.
Yeah.
I am more against killing other people.
I'm also against punching people in the face.
No,
but okay.
I mean,
you do
it's
martial
kind of
arts
fun though.
now.
Have you tried it though? Like,
For legal reasons, Paul is talking about places where people have consented to being punched in the face because they do martial arts.
Or because they touched my sunburn. I'm like, if you touch my sunburn again, I am going to punch you in the face. Anyway,
You have laid out your consequences well, and by touching your sunburn again, they have in a sense consented. Right?
exactly,
You have laid out.
Yes, they've
understand.
implicitly
They understand.
consented to being punched
Yeah.
in the face.
Very
Exactly.
slippery
Yeah.
slope, but yes, we'll accept
They
that.
basically asked me to punch them in the face. But the point being, like, if your issue with mind control is the removal of agency,
Yeah.
well, killing someone is like the ultimate removal of agency. That person no longer has any agency because they
It's the
cease to
removal
exist.
of future agency. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're done, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they don't have to then proceed under mind control, but they can't do anything else. Their choices are spent. They're gone. They've been
Yeah.
taken from them. So
Yeah.
to me, it's like, if we're looking at sort of lesser evil, like, well, which is worse? Well, killing
Yeah.
someone's worse. So yeah, I'll mind control anybody, like, in order to stop that. Right.
Yeah.
And like, if you're good at it, maybe you can kind of be like, maybe there's a way to not turn people into automatons. I don't know. Like, if you're actually able to mind control everyone, but
Sure.
whatever. That's, anyway.
Yeah.
So one thumb up, one thumb down. Well,
I
put you
think
on
I
the spot.
have to go thumb down on that specific situation. I don't know. I mean, the other approach that you see is like the alien race that knows better comes down and forces
Right.
it on everyone. and
Yeah,
it's like, this is how we fix global warming. We're going to do it with or without you. Good luck.
yeah.
I mean, I think part of it is that it always matters how you do something.
Mhm.
I don't think that ends justify means. I think that the means create new ends and new means in future situations, and so it's not as cut and dried as like, is this an ethical thing to do? It's like,
Right.
what are the knock-on effects that will happen, and what can it? But I think something like that gets to the fundamentally conservative nature of a lot of superhero media, where superheroes are trying to return the world to status quo.
Right.
Whenever crisis happens, superheroes intervene, return the world to status quo, and then you continue on from there, versus like actively trying to pursue. Except for X-Men. X-Men are trying to create a loving utopia between different groups, and that is fundamentally different. But everybody else, they're just trying to protect the world by
Because every time
returning
someone's
it to
tried to
status
create a
quo.
utopia, they've certainly never done harm to people who got in the way of their utopia. Never.
That's
never,
a
never.
separate point. It's
I
not
hear
about
you.
whether they're doing wrong or whether it's good or bad. In the Krakoa era, if you've been listening to Hype is My Superpower, you'll see they're doing a lot of bad. But it's just a matter of is their aim, conservative or utopian, essentially.
And I think that gets into where we started, this idea of, can you be the outside, objective, rational answer? Because,
Mhm.
and I think that is kind of a cheat of the show, because they never actually explain, why do these other aliens care that this planet might or might not die from global warming? And I think that, and because I will say, I am in the end.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Well, here's the funny thing. I'm pretty sure when it came out in 2015, I was thumbs down very, very reluctantly. I'm not
Yeah.
anymore. I think I'm okay with it. a lot for the reason that Paul was saying, because I do think that, like, excuse me a second, hold on. Pontificating is thirsty work. I do think that there's something about imminent danger, and that, like, literally, if I'm pointing a gun at someone else's head, I don't think that physically stopping my hand or mentally stopping my hand, I don't think that one of them is more virtuous. I think both prevent me from shooting the gun. Excuse me.
But how imminent is the danger, and how legitimate
right now our generation
is
holding that gun on every generation that's going to come after ours, and our finger is getting more and more to the trigger. And maybe it's just because I've philosophically changed, or maybe it's just because in 2015 I had more hope that we would actually be smart and fix it than I do today. And I think, though, at the end of the day, and here's where, as the person who hosts the ethical podcast and calls myself the ethical panda, I'm a little weird. I think the only point of ethics is to recognize that it's a theoretical conversation to help you make real life actions. And so I would say, from a theoretical standpoint, I am always going to say that I think that mind control is, if anything, a necessary evil and something I would wish could be avoided, because what's their agenda? And are they going to then say, oh, well, this other planet is actually, like, painting everything beige and it would be better if it's purple, so now we're going to mind control them to do that?
Yeah, but beige.
I mean, that sounds like imminent threat right there.
Right, exactly.
If you've seen interior design trends from the last, 10 years, shout out McMansionHell.com.
But the point being, I don't know if it's ethical, but if I had the power to stop them, I wouldn't. I would say, no, I think this is ethical or not. I think it's the right thing to do. And in many ways, I think that's kind of the point, is in the same way with the religion idea, like, ethics is great, but at some point you just got to decide, like, what's the right decision to make.
And to me, that's about consequence, right? It's what are the consequences of your action? Like what? And to me, that's like, I'm not stopping people. I wouldn't use the mind control out of, like, judging people. It's out of attempting to estimate the consequences of their likely actions. And then what are the consequences of my actions? And Steve brings up good points, like, okay, but where does it stop? Like, do you just constantly like in Red Sun, I'm not a fan of what Superman's going around doing, right? Just to stick with the DC. But like,
Will, you're making a face.
The glory of DC.
I'm trying to think of a good Marvel example.
No, it's fine.
Professor X.
Red Sun was a good comic.
Sure,
it's one of the like 3 DC comics I've ever read.
But it's like, it also depends to me, like not that there's an objective truth in terms of like morals or ethics, but that, I mean, either climate change is really bad and gonna be worse, or it's not. And where you stand on that, and what you actually think of what the difference between 2015 and now is like climate change isn't the future. Yeah. Like we're not looking into the future saying, things are going to get so much worse. I mean, we are, but we're also looking and being like, oh, it's forest fire season, in Canada, like what, like there are natural disasters currently going on there. And yes, that was already true in 2015, but it's more true. I mean, just in that 8-year period, you can see how fast things have accelerated. And it is to the point of, it's like, what is anybody really going to do about it? You know?
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I wanted to, I had a, no, I think that's
questions?
good.
Okay.
Will,
on that cheery note.
Will, do you have anything that you want to bring up? And
from, I guess I have like a wrap up, thumb up, thumbs down question of.
Oh, I do have one more after this. Go ahead, Will. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine. It's more just kind of from how do you affect the world around you according to your personal beliefs perspective? Do you think you would get a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Depends if I've taken my medication.
Legit. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think in terms of my own, like, I would probably give myself a thumbs up, but at the same time, like if I really ask myself, it's like, am I actually doing enough to affect positive change? And the answer is just no. You know, I mean, I do think throughout my life, I've done a very good job of limiting the harm that I cause to others, you know, in terms of humans, but especially non-human inhabitants of the earth, which I think, like, if we look at it relatively, like, yeah, like, you know, I think I'm in the 99th percentile there, but like in terms of actually effectively changing things, like taking the kinds of actions that, like, you know, my great uncle did, like to be like, yeah, I will put everything into the basket of trying to change the world. Like, no, I don't do that. So,
Yeah.
you know, with a favorable judge, like, yeah, easy pass. But like with a harsh, like, are you really changing things? Like, no. You know.
I think
So
I
it
might have
depends, like,
passed.
what's a pass scale, you know?
I think I would have passed 10 years ago. I think I would fail now. But I think I'm a much healthier and happier person now.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Like, it's hard to like exist and continue existing while doing everything you feel like you should do, right? Like,
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
sustainable.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
Well, I guess for me, like, I am confident in my ability to change people's worlds positively, of the ones that like I'm in contact with. But do I go out and try to do that more? No. Like, I don't. I know that I'm confident in my ability to, you know, make people or help people have a positive day, or like a, you know, be a plus in somebody's experience of the last 24 hours. I am confident in that. Am I taking that confidence and ability and walking down Main Street and telling people, "Hey, I hope you have a good day"? No. So like, on what scale? I think on the global scale, I don't think I would pass. On a personal scale, I would hope that I pass, but I don't know. I guess it depends on how the progenitor understands my personal intentions.
I think for myself, 10 or 15 years ago, I was much more sure. 10 or 15 years ago, I was completely sure that I would pass. And the fact that I am not today is why I think today I actually pass. Because I think an awful lot of harm is done in this world by people who are so convinced that they are doing the right thing that they're not stopping and questioning enough. Because I was, you know, I was the kind of person who would, like, you know, be sure that I was helping the people in my life without actually paying much attention to what they said they needed, but much more about what I thought they needed. I think a lot of my politics was coming from really like that kind of place of white guilt and white liberalism of like, I know what is best for everybody else, and so I can do those things. And like, I think at that time of life, I did do a lot of good in a lot of ways, and I also caused a lot of harm. And I think today I have a much smaller range of influence. And I think for the most part, it means I'm doing a lot less harm, and I'm still doing some good. But at the end of the day, I think more than anything, I think it's the fact that I'm no longer living my life by wondering about that question. Because, and here I'm going to tie it in again, I think that, you know, there's a lot of questions you can ask about, like, why has Christianity done so much harm, in particular among world religions? And part of that's just because it existed in the place that guns first were, you know, really existing, and that had different germs and all this kind of stuff. But part of it's also because one of the fundamental things that a majoritarian part of Christianity for too long taught was this idea of God will only love you if you can prove that you are worth being loved. And so it drives people in both their personal life and in their political life to go out and do so much. I think, honestly, the best way to get that thumbs up is to take yourself off of that treadmill, where it's no longer, I have to spend 2 more hours at this food bank instead of going home and watching the TV I want to watch, because or else I'm a bad person. Whether that's
Right.
I'm a bad person in the eyes of my God or myself or the person who's next to me at the food bank. Whatever it is, that is just such a self-destructive and destructive of others place to be in. And so I think in a lot of ways, just the more, to me, the reason I'm the most thumbs up now than I think I've ever been in my life, probably still not thumbs up enough by any means, but it's because I'm more than anything, I'm trying to get off that treadmill.
Legit.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the opposite of kind of my own view of myself and sort of Steve's self-assessment, right? In terms of like feeling like I'm not doing enough, but like in turn, I feel like you would judge me well. Maybe that's why we're friends. I don't know. Probably not. But
I feel like that's the that's kind of like part of the thing in like the progenitor appears to you as somebody who going back to the comics here, who's somebody whose judgment you would respect. And so it sometimes it's interpreted as like, what would this person think of you? And sometimes because it's not all written by the same person, it's inconsistent, and sometimes they're just taking the form opportunistically. But yeah, I think we're all, the harshest judges of ourselves. And part of that is just like, we have the highest idea of the things that we desire or are capable of. And we judge ourselves based on our idealized best self versus other people judge us based on who we are.
Or their perceptions of us anyway.
Or their perceptions of us. Exactly.
What
yeah.
we show them.
I wanted to close out this podcast, if we're at the point of closing it out, with a you were talking about faith before, Matthew, and I have to say, despite being an atheist, I think it's impossible to not live a certain amount of your life based on faith for the exact reasons that you said. They're just things that you can't know, and you have to kind of put foundational building blocks in your life over to paper over uncertainty, just to kind of like get through the day and be able to put one foot forward in front of the other and have just any firmament to stand on in your life. And I think one of the articles of faith that I hold in my life is that not explicitly that we will pass in these terms, but that it's going to be okay, that people are going to be capable of the kind of collective action that it's going to take to build a better world for each other. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, climate change is going to be all right, or any of these disasters as they stack up are going to be okay in the end, or that bad things won't continue to happen in the world, because obviously they will. But at some point, in some way, we are going to figure out how to build a world where people love each other and create the best world for each other. And to me, that's what the pass is.
Down.
I will point out that someone gave you some tokens for a posture check, so we are all being judged at the moment for a posture, but I think that is a good thing to be judged.
Oh,
It's because my camera's too low. I'm sitting up, damn it.
Look,
You're
I
like
hurt
way
my back
down
because
in
I'm
the
not
frame.
sitting right.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, this is a place where outside objective judgment is a good thing.
Well, hey, thank you both so much for joining us, and this was a really fantastic conversation.
It's fun.
Yeah, it was a
Do you
lot
want
of
to give
fun.
any?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Do you want to give any more plugs before you go?
Yeah, where can we find you guys?
Paul?
Yeah, I'm Zen Madman. I like tweet chess puzzles and stuff, and I'll make some more stuff. Maybe there will be more stuff out by the time this podcast is actually produced and released, because Steve seems to say that it could be a
He
minute.
likes to take his time. It's fine.
But yeah,
I don't like to. I just do.
you just do. Right.
This is how
Right.
this is how
Fair
I
enough.
this is how I get the thumbs down.
It's very relatable though. I have multiple YouTube channels that I haven't made a video on for a year. So, but I constantly think of good video ideas. So maybe by the time this is out, there'll be new ones on Zen Madman Chess, or Zen Madman Poker. And maybe maybe I'll start streaming again on Twitch as Zen Madman. So Yeah, and that's about it. And I appear intermittently, less frequently than before, on Matthew's podcasts, which I will now pass the baton.
Yeah, and I'll just say kind of as by way of introducing my podcasts, but also kind of responding to Steve what you said. If I have any article of faith, it's that conversation moves things forward. When it's conversation among people in good faith who might see things differently, but are all kind of coming at it from an open perspective. And so, really, thank you guys for hosting this conversation. I think this is a great chance to exchange ideas and bounce things around. And all of my podcasting is based off of taking the geeky media projects that people love, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, especially Star Trek, Cobra Kai, because surviving in high school is a superpower, all these things, and using them as a launching point to have conversations. Because to me, if I have any article of faith, it's at the end of the day, like I'm interested in trying to find a way to say, hey, if you and I both like this shared concept of a story, can we talk about what it means to us, and maybe that can advance the way we try to be better to each other. And so, yeah, so my podcast, which, wow, I just set a really high bar for them. We do also just spend a lot of time talking about cool fight scenes. But The Ethical Panda is probably the main ones worthy to hear. We've done content recently on AI and issues with robots. Will came on and did a great podcast with me about the new Spider-Verse movie, which, by the way, Paul, the moment it is announced what date it is released on any kind of streaming platform, I'm going to schedule you to a podcast with me like 4 hours after that, because I really want to hear your take on it.
But it's part 1. Like, can't I wait till part 2 comes out and watch both?
No.
I won't even get into that. No spoilers whatsoever, but it is...
Lee really wants to watch it.
Ethically,
so
no.
We'll do that. We can...
It's
we
amazing.
can
It's amazing.
Okay.
My other one's called Star Wars. My other one is called the Star Wars Universe Podcast. That one is specifically about Star Wars, but I'm very proud that I got a review once because Paul and I were having a conversation about something in Mandalore, and we didn't know the name of like a dead animal that was on the ground, because apparently it was the skeleton of a crate dragon, and neither of us recognized that.
Oof.
That was on
We're
Tatooine,
much
though,
more interested
right?
in the
I know that
character and
now.
the Force and the ideas and all this kind of stuff. We're right now doing a final season of Rebels, and we're talking about other content to get ready for the Ahsoka show. Lots of good stuff to check out there. And you can find all the podcasts I do under theethicalpanda.com. I've also on a different podcast called Bingers Assemble. Been doing covering every one of the Indiana Jones movies. They're mostly to kind of be fun and build some hype and excitement about the new ones coming out. But we will be doing a podcast on the ethics of archaeology as portrayed in those movies, which I have some ethical questions about. Not only also the ethics of dating your colleague's daughter, which is presented in a very interesting way in those movies. So yeah, lots to check out. Theethicalpanda.com is where you'll find all of it.
And
Awesome.
the first one is superhero ethics, right? Unless you change the title.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I am the Ethical Panda. Theethicalpanda.com has both of them. The two podcasts are called Superhero Ethics and Star Wars Universe Podcast.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, guys. I love having guests because you never know where the conversation's going to go. Steve and I have had conversations with each other for 35 years now. Like it's pretty predictable where where our thought process is going to go. So it's really fun having both of you on, and also extra shout out to any other guest that we've had on that's listening to this episode as well.
Absolutely.
Anytime you want someone to come on and tell you the whole premise of the comic and the idea is stupid, I'm here for you. So
Perfect.
It's perfect.
Yes.
bye-bye, everybody.
Awesome.
All right.
Goodbye.
Wait, you have to.
Oh
there's
gosh,
something
yeah,
that
it
you
gets
have to
real
do.
awkward if we don't do that, because we have to put the outro music like here, and if I don't say that, the podcast doesn't end, and then you end up with like a
And it just goes
48-hour
on and on.
episode.
Yep,
it's real
exactly.
bad. It's
Bad
real,
times.
real bad.
All right.
Jeez. Stop.
Take care, everybody. Great to have you.
Oh yeah, we're gonna end the Zoom.
Recording
Yeah.
stopped.
All right.
Thanks,
cheers.
friends. You guys are
Bye.
amazing. Steve,
Bye,
have fun
Twitch.
with your
Bye, Will.
quote
Bye,
unquote
Steve.
in-laws,
Bye,
your
Matthew.
basic
Yes,
in-laws.
absolutely.
Quote
Matthew, have
unquote.
fun doing what I believe you're
common
about to
law
go do. You're
in-laws.
closed out.
Yeah. In common laws.
And Paul,
Yes,
thanks for being
there
here. I
we go.
appreciate you. I'm gonna be in the 702 in October for TwitchCon.
Oh, cool. October. That's probably the last month I'll be here. I might be back in the 707 in November. So
Okay. Well, keep me posted because
Will
I'll
do.
do it.
Yeah, word. It might be like right around your birthday time though, so
That's fine.
we'll talk. We'll
Get
talk.
some sweat on during my birthday. It's not a problem.
Word. Little birthday exercise.
Exactly.
There we go.
All right. Cheers.
Oh,
Bye,
boy.
everyone.
All right.
Take
ciao.
care. Bye, Steve. Thanks
Bye,
for being here.
Will. Yeah, thanks for being you. Peace.
Hey, thanks for being you. Don't take my words, lines, guy, person.
All right. Leave.
All right. Goodbye. All right. Well, that was fun. I am currently naming my podcast for those who are still here. Be healthy. Yeah, I don't even say that outro on the podcast stream. What's the date today? 11th. So I forgot. Identity. Be healthy, be strong, be gentle. And tell your loved ones you love them even when you're upset. That's how we do it. Okay. All right, friends. Thank you everyone who is here. Thank you, Cosma, for the drink up, and Lou Cordero for the posture check. Appreciate all you guys for hanging out for a little bit. I'll be back in about 3 hours. We're gonna read some Iron Man tonight. It's gonna be awesome. All right, I will see you guys in a little bit. Thanks. Bye.